Welcome everybody, I'm Alexander Williamson and you're watching FISHTORY. So today we are going to be talking about creating your very own, one-of-a-kind, never before seen, brand new plants. So you can do this by flowering two different plants in the same genus. So two plants that are somewhat related. So like this Anubias caufifolia, see the rounded leaves, the darker green, it's got ribbing on the leaves. And this Anubias fraseri, longer leaves, more green and more stripes, but no ridges or bumps really on the leaves. Well, 5 years ago, I crossed these two plants and this monster was created. So this is a fraseri crossed with the caufifolia Anubias, and this is what the strain looks like. Now this one's a little beat up because it literally can't fit in the tank anymore. It's getting smushed by the light, and the rhizome is so large after 5-6 years that it needs to be kind of broken up or put into a huge tank. But the point still stands. Today we're going to be talking about how you can get two plants that are somewhat similar and you can get traits from both those plants. So if you see here, we've got leaves that have ridges. We also have longer leaves, and they're a dark green in most cases. And yet it is still a completely healthy and pretty plant. Also actually has some nice red hues down lower, which the fraseri seems to have and the caufifolia does not. Look at the size of the rhizome on for such a small leafed plant here. This is also a pretty old cutting. But this plant is huge because it's being grown immersed, and I was trying to get it to flower to cross it again. So let's talk a little bit more about what in the heck is going on with all of this and how you too, the details, can create a cross of two of your favorite plants to get either traits of survivability, whether that's hard water and soft water, or whether that's a aesthetic trait, so you want it to look a certain way. So let's talk about it. Let's look at some of the plants I've crossed recently and in the last few years, and we'll cover all the bases right now. Alright guys, so I want to show you a few examples of what I'm talking about first. And you know, to do this, you probably will want a fairly good light. Something like a Fluval 3.0 or a Twin Star S series, maybe an EA series would work as well. But I like the Twin Star S series personally. It works really well for flowering plants above your aquarium. And I actually just trimmed this, but right now we've got my Hydrocotyle verticillata. It is flowering, and so is the Persicaria over here, which I absolutely love this plant. It is just about as hardy as they come, and it grows naturally in the waters near my house, and in those conditions, that kind of plant, it actually has a purple heart on a lot of the leaves when it gets larger. But the main thing is it can survive very, very cold winters. And so it's a plant that I can put out into my tubs outside, my ponds and my tubs. Whereas Persicaria cowaggium or Sao Paulo, which I also have in this aquarium, which have much more reds and pinks, they're a very tropical plant, and they are a lot less tolerant of the cold. So I decided that we're going to flower both of them. And here you can see we've got a flower from a cowaggium, and there's also a Sao Paulo flower back over here. And then this is the Persicaria maculosa from around here in Washington State in the Seattle area. And I'm going to show you guys how we're going to cross these. But before I do that, let me show you a couple crosses that I've done in the past over here. And we'll talk a little bit about what goes into it. So, as I said, you're going to need a light decent enough to get the plants to come to the surface and breach the surface, which is what we call immersed growth. Now, one of the easiest plants to cross is Ludwigia. Ludwigias and Rotalas are very easy stem plants to cross. All you need to do is get them to flower, and then using a little Q-tip or paintbrush, you literally take the pollen off of one flower and you put it onto the flowers of another plant that's simultaneously flowering. And once you do that, usually the flower will then turn to seeds, and then those seeds you can either collect or allow to fall into your aquarium, and within about 3 months to a year, and it really depends on the species. With Ludwigia, it's usually like 4 months or so, 6 months at most, they will then sprout and grow into a new plant. So I can show you here. So this is a Ludwigia repens here with the nice purple underleaf and kind of a greenish color on the top of the leaf with a bit of bronze in it. Then we've got a Ludwigia red star here that has a bit of variegation, so you can see the veins a little bit in it on the leaves, and it's a much brighter pink color, but they both have that same shaped leaf. So what I did is I went ahead and I crossed them, and the result has been this, which I'm really fond of. Sometimes some plants won't cross even in the same genus, and other times you can't even tell that they crossed, and it's going to take a few generations or a few different crosses to get certain genes to express, and it's a bit of luck of the draw. But that's kind of the fun of it, right? You have to figure out which traits are dominant versus which traits are recessive. But here we can see that it appears that the variegation in the leaf is a dominant trait in this situation, and then so is the bright redness of the leaves. So granted, these are growing up in the light, but actually we have some examples that were underneath all this salvinia and back tucked away under here that are also growing this same way. And so what we did was we just waited for the Ludwigia to have some flowers on it, which was over last summer. And then I took a little paintbrush and I went and I found those flowers, just like these ones here. And I literally tapped like this underneath it until I saw a little few flecks of pollen. You can see there's one or two, there's about 3 or 4 little flecks of pollen on the end of the brush now. And then after that, I just go ahead and I come at it from above usually, but then I will just brush that right onto one of the other flowers, and you're trying to get it right into the center of the flower ideally. But this is what, birds and bees and bugs are doing for you out in nature. And literally that's all there is to it. Now I do it as much as possible while the plant is flowering, and as long as I have 2 specimens of different species that are flowering. And the same way that you do this, you can also get a plant oftentimes to self-pollinate. So it depends on the plant and if it's a self-fertilizer or a self-pollinator. But for instance, with Aponogetans, you can get them like lace plant or pluviulosis or ulvasis. You can get them to cross as well with themselves, essentially. So it's not a cross. It's just a self-pollination. But I had a beautiful purple plant that was a deep, deep purple, and I decided to cross a purple Longia pluviulosis and an ulvasis Aponogeton. And what I ended up with was, from crossing a green and a purple, was this kind of light pink color. It's kind of in between the greens that you see in the other Aponogetons and in the plants that I crossed with it. Unfortunately, I don't have the purple one present, but it is around in other videos, and I covered it as a species spotlight in the past. So you can check that out if you're interested. Now, another one that I love doing this with is Bacopas. Bacopas are a really fun plant, and they have a really beautiful flower, usually white or yellow, sometimes blue. depending on the variety, sometimes purple or kind of a lavender color. But there's Australis, there's Caroliniana, there's Americanus, there's Colorata, and there is all sorts of different kinds out there. So I just think that it's a really cool one. This is a cross between the Colorata and the Caroliniana, and you can see it's actually got a little more red and bronze in it than just the straight, if we find over here, for instance, with the bigger leaves, you can see the Caroliniana, and over here you can see the Australis, which has a bit of the bronze in it, but then it's got more pointy leaves. Well, right here we've kind of got in between. We've got bigger leaves that still have a point to them, and they've got kind of that pinkish bronze to them. So just kind of a fun example. But let's get to the Persicaria and talk about why I'm crossing those. I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but let's go take a look. Alright, so over here we've got the Persicaria cowageum, and pardon the mess, I know that there's a bunch of dead plant leaves and mess over here, clutter. Pardon the mess, and let's focus on the plants. So as we see here, these little flowers here are going to be the key to pollination. Now we're going to get a different brush. Obviously, you don't want to use the same brush, and you can see the pollen left over on this same brush. But you'd get a different brush, and you would tap this until you start to see some pollen on it. It's usually white or yellow or green, and these are teeny tiny little flowers, and so you're going to have to get the pollen from them sometimes and hold it, like leave it on the brush for a few days and wait until they hit a stage where it has opened up more. So here is an example of where it's opened up more. And sometimes we've already meddled with the plant so much that it doesn't actually doesn't germinate or doesn't fruit or flower the way it should. Because we've, played with it. Just like corn and wheat, those used to be little seedlets like this size, and now we have giant corn kernels to play with and eat. So it really depends on what humans have done to the plant also. But in this hobby, there are so many different plants that if the plant is in the same genus, sometimes even if it's not, but that's rare, but if it's in the same genus, and it has a flowering method of reproduction, there's a good chance you'll be able to cross them. So in here we have an absolutely beautiful flowering plant. Let's see if we can get to it. So yes, this is a Lindernia, that's the genus, and you can see these beautiful purple flowers that come out. Absolutely gorgeous. Here's another little flower. This is a blue variety rather than a purple variety. I've just been selectively breeding them for the colors. And right next to this, you can see I've got yet another type of Persicaria like I had in the other room. And this one actually has some red in the flowers, some pink and red in the actual inflorescence or flowering part of the plant. And while a lot of the plant, let's see if we can get this focused better, is really tight and hard to pollinate, these bigger opening buds will be much easier to cross. And you can get things from color to leaf shape to its traits. So if you want a cold-loving plant to tolerate warmer water, that's a great reason to try crossing. If it has resistance to a certain pest, that's another great reason to try crossing it. But once you cross it, you do all that above water, and then the seeds can fall down into water, or you can hatch them, if you want to call it that. You can sprout them in like a little napkin or something like that. So first you store the seeds, let them dry. Some plants you'll want to let the seeds completely dry out. Others, like most aquatic plants, it's really okay not to. But you then take the plant and the seed and you put it in a wet paper towel in a dark, damp place, usually 45 to 80 degrees depending on the species. It really can vary, and then you can get it to sprout in kind of a damp paper towel or maybe some egg crate. It just depends on the species, and you can do some research and try to find similar species and what other people have done in the past. There's quite a bit of info out there in the botanical world. But hopefully we are going to cross this skinny leaf Potamogeton with some of the broader leaf Potamogetons that also have more color, and the leaves kind of curl too as they exit the water. Underwater, the Potamogetons, which we're not seeing a whole lot of right now because this tank's kind of a mess, as most of my life is. You get these beautiful colors on the leaves like this. That's very typical, where you get the red at the base, and then it goes to kind of a green, and then it can go to a yellow or a brown. And it just makes for a really beautiful plant, especially like these leaves here with the bright pink and the yellow and the green. Very cool look. I'd love it if I could get that in a cold tolerant variety, or to get the colorful variety on the wider variety of leaves. So that's why I'm crossing it, and it's going to take some time. It's not really an exciting process that you can watch happen. So check back for when I've completed it, and just stay tuned, because over time I do this with many different plants, and that's why I have such a jungle growing out of so many tanks in this house. And I wanted to show you guys this. This is that little purple heart that I was speaking of that's on some of these plants in this genus. They have kind of 2 dots on either side, and it doesn't look like a heart so much here, but this is the trait that I've managed to get into the tropical variety from the variety that grows around here in Seattle. And now we've got this little purple heart-shaped blob. Really, it's just 2 dots that are at an angle. But hopefully that will look even more heart-shaped over time. We might need to cross it again and see what happens when we do that. Cross that plant with another one of the purple heart leaf plants. Let's see if we can find, yeah, here is one that's all native right here. And the purple hearts have kind of grown out and changed their shape a little bit, but this is one, you can see it doesn't have the red leaves and the pinks and things, but it has green and purple very clearly. One really cool thing is I crossed these a while back with the native kind that just has the green leaves and the more colorful tropical kind, and now I have plants including this one here, and also, where's the best one at? It is right over here, where you can see we've got those beautiful colors on the margins, and we've got the purple, which is actually a kind of a bright pink now, especially when you hold it up to the light, and more of a duller green when it's not right under the light. But here, right under the light, it turns kind of a fuchsia or bright green, or bright green next to that fuchsia color, which I really like. It's a little different than kind of the natural occurring kind that has more of a darker purple on it. So that is what we're doing here, what's going on, and why I've lost my mind. But hopefully now you understand. Thank you so much, guys, for watching. I really appreciate it, especially since everything behind me is kind of undergoing new aquascaping and so forth. And these long projects, you know, I kind of hide them away and then spring them on you years after the fact. Same with when I'm working on guppy lines or shrimp lines. And I couldn't do it without you guys, without your support. So thank you so much for tuning in, for sharing. Share this with someone that you think might find it interesting. All of it is useful if you're doing vivariums, ripariums, things like that. It's done the exact same way. So we just have the element of the aquarium to tie in. And actually that gives us more options in some cases. But we can get more into that in another video. So drop me a comment if you want to know even more about it. I have other videos on how you make tissue cultures and undifferentiated cell nodes, and what an albino plant is versus a pinto versus a variegated, and what goes on with the genetics there. We can get into all sorts of nerdy stuff if you guys want. So check what other videos I have if you're interested in the topics, and also then leave me a comment what else you'd like to know about. Beyond that, have a wonderful day. Take care of your fishes, the people around you, and of course yourself, or you can't do any of the other stuff. I'll see you guys next time.